At the end of the second millennium BC, the collapse of the Bronze Age significantly changed the configuration of the Mediterranean. While some peoples were irremediably destroyed, others were badly damaged and were forced to flee to other points of the sea. The Greeks and the Phoenicians quickly emerged as leaders of this new reality and founded settlements and trading posts throughout the Mediterranean. And this allowed them to establish contact with various indigenous peoples of Western Europe, some of whom had already developed sophisticated civilizations. In the south of the Iberian Peninsula was one of the most outstanding cultures of the time. Known to the Greeks as Tartessos and located in a port city of the same name. And incredibly, for millennia, this people had created and developed a sophisticated culture that was based on trade with other peoples such as the Phoenicians, the Greeks, the Celts, and other Iberian tribes. But who were these Tartessians, and how did they become the most dominant culture of ancient Hispania, respected and even admired by the ancient Greeks? To do so, we must go to the archaic Mediterranean at the beginning of the first millennium BC, where Greeks and Phoenicians gradually increased their colonial competition, founding a series of trading posts that would be disputed for centuries. And in the south of the Iberian Peninsula, they encountered an advanced and increasingly rich native culture, Tartessos. Tartessos was located in what is now the south of Spain, and more specifically at the mouth of the Guadalquivir River, and it became an important center of trade, establishing its own sphere of influence on the southern Iberian coast. The Greeks of the time, in fact, considered it an important commercial center of the Western Mediterranean, as it offered, among other things, rich metals, silver, and gold, which were highly valued among the Hellenic colonists and travelers. The Tartessians even came to develop their own writing system, possibly as early as the 7th century BC, which was based on the Greek and Phoenician alphabets. Most of Tartessian history, including its mythological beginning, is known from the writings that Greek geographers and historians recorded during their interactions with its people. But to understand its origins, we must go to the late Bronze Age. Back then, Iberian culture was home to a series of native cultures that were gradually developing, especially in the southernmost area of the peninsula, which had a very good geographical position for trading with other maritime peoples. The first mention of the people who inhabited these lands comes with the story of Heracles, the mythical Greek demigod who, carrying out his famous labors, traveled to the nearby island of Erythea and defeated Geryon to capture his cattle. According to Greek mythology, Geryon was a three-headed giant who owned a herd of sacred cattle on the island of Erythea, and one of the labors of Hercules, or Heracles, was to steal said cattle and bring it back to Eurystheus, who was the one who had imposed the tasks on him. To carry out this complicated mission, Hercules traveled there and fought with Geryon's two-headed dog, Orthrus, then finished off the giant and headed back to Greece. During this adventure, it is said that he founded a small settlement in that area, and later the strait that separated Iberia from Africa came to be known as the Pillars of Hercules. And this point is very important because, according to Plato, Atlantis was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules. So there are many experts who say that perhaps Tartessos was really Plato's Atlantis. However, it must be made clear that Atlantis was surely just a fictional story, and to the date this video was made, there is no archaeological proof of its existence. The people who inhabited that island, as well as the surrounding area, were the prehistoric Iberians, not much more advanced than any other culture in Iberia at that time. However, the interaction that these people had with other cultures from all over the Mediterranean through trade led the southern Iberians to become gradually richer and also more advanced than any other culture in ancient Iberia. The truth is that it is unknown when exactly the city of Tartessos was founded, but what is known is that it quickly became the center of an emerging civilization based on long-distance trade with Greeks, Phoenicians, and their colonies. One of the first settlements established by the colonists was Menesthius's port, founded by Greeks after the legendary Trojan War. But before it was Gades, which was built by Phoenician colonists from Tyre. In fact, Gades is thought to be the oldest settlement in the area, as it is believed to have been founded in the 11th century BC and was for centuries the most important port in all of Western Europe. According to the story, Gargorus had a son with his own mother, something that was unacceptable according to Tartessian customs. Thus, he decided to abandon and cast out the child, a product of that incest. Years later, the child, now an adult named Habis, returned to the kingdom and became king of all the Tartessians. Later, the Tartessian trade network expanded as the rivalry between Greeks and Phoenicians increased in the Western Mediterranean, where Tartessos was doing business with both sides. Certainly, the city was very rich and possessed large quantities of iron and other metals from neighboring tribes, including the Celts, who had migrated from the north. Although at first the most important routes were with the Phoenicians, soon the Greeks began to dominate the northern part of the Western Mediterranean, creating equally important routes. As I mentioned earlier, between the 8th and 7th centuries BC, the Tartessians had their own script based on the Phoenician alphabet. In fact, at first, they used this alphabet to write in their language, but they soon developed their own characters, which have been found throughout the south of the Iberian Peninsula. Traditionally, the Tartessians had a good relationship with the Greeks from the region of Phocaea, who were very famous for their long sea voyages. Such was the friendship that, according to Greek historians, the Tartessian king Arganthonios offered them the chance to found new settlements near the area of Tartessos. But the Greeks refused and founded their colonies in Massalia, modern-day Marseille, and Emporion, in the current Spanish region of Ampurias. Shortly after, the Greek colonies became the main trading partners of Tartessos, while the rivalry with the Phoenicians only intensified. Another proof of friendship between the Greeks of Phocaea and the Tartessians is that when the original settlement in Asia Minor was threatened by the emerging Persian Empire, King Arganthonios gave large sums of money to the Greeks so they could fortify their city. Nevertheless, all of Asia Minor ended up falling under Persian rule, and many Greeks, refusing to submit, migrated to their colonies throughout the Western Mediterranean. The Massalite Greeks, in fact, eventually founded a city very close to Tartessian territory, Minake, located very near Malacca. Consequently, Greco-Tartessian trade would continue to progress until the rise of Carthage, the most powerful colony founded by the Phoenicians. As soon as Carthage emerged, it began to expand its influence along the Iberian coast, as well as throughout the Western Mediterranean. At this point, open conflict between Greeks and Carthaginians was inevitable, and this greatly harmed Tartessos, as its trade with the Greeks gradually deteriorated until it practically disappeared. Tartessos, due to this crisis, began to lose power in its own zone of influence and was gradually absorbed by native Iberian tribes, such as Celts. Meanwhile, the large-scale armed conflicts between Greeks and Carthaginians only made everything worse. Ultimately, Carthage finally became the dominant power in the area, taking over more territories in the Iberian Peninsula as well as on the Mediterranean islands. At this point, the Tartessian civilization found itself cornered and was no longer sustainable, with its territories conquered by its neighbors and its glorious capital falling into the abyss of oblivion. If you liked this video, you can leave a like to let me know, and if you are not subscribed, I recommend you do so, as I will continue uploading content like this. Thanks to all the members who support this channel and make it possible for me to keep going. See you in the next video.